Welcome back to Ghosts of the Coast Volume 11, starring Rattlesnakedre, Kyle Crosby of Louisiana Dread, and Blake Tauzin.
But man, isn't like those events that you just like you don't evacuate now? That's like you're like, okay, yeah, I think I'm good. And, I mean, normal people are. If you could be all right from the storms. Back then, they didn't know shit, and they thought they did. And I feel as though maybe with everything going on with the climate, that can make a return easily. Because it's very easy for people to sit in, higher ground, a little bit further north of where we live or we're from, and be safe and be okay. But Hurricane Laura tore up Lake Charles, and it kept going further north as a Cat 1 almost in Shreveport. Those kind of people never saw something like that before. And in Arkansas, people were just dying left and right because the power lines were falling and just some crazy ass shit. So, I mean, damn.
Similar to that one that hit on the East Coast, far up. I think it was like
Sally.
Yeah, they were kind of freaking out about it.
One of the last little tropical storms that passed, they said it was going to be maximum, 60, 70 mile an hour winds, and it ended up being 125.
Yeah, it was insane. It was just going to get, I mean, that's what we're going to see. Maybe, yeah, these intense storms and stuff, but damn, bro, I'll let you borrow it, if y'all want to read it. It's bone chilling. It gives you really empathize with these people because they're actual real people, and they quote them in some like really shitty situations.
And that's all journal entries.
It's all journal entries that they wrote, and they just compiled everything together, and she wrote it in order. So she put all their notes together and actual historical documents. And the beginning's a little boring if you're from Louisiana because it goes into, well, I mean, I say that, but you could, some things you might not know about Louisiana. I think it's quite fascinating, but it says a lot of stuff that you already know, the marshland and all this kind of stuff. But the book, it's not a hard read. It's very easy, and it's something you get done in maybe a day, 2 days, maybe a week. But it's like I'm just getting the frissons right now and just flashbacks to thing. I want to read it again. It's something. It's kind of like when you read those old slave narratives when they were in, because here, like in Louisiana, you had to so Americans saw educated slave as very dangerous. But
that's why they didn't want to teach them to read or write.
Correct. But Creoles did teach them. Now, it's not universal, obviously, but majority, I would say, of Creole plantations, they would teach some of their slaves how to read and write. In French, obviously. But they didn't write political treats and stuff, but they're writing their narratives down or writing little notes here and there. And reading some of those, I mean, it's incredible because it's pre-emancipation. They're still enslaved at this point. Whereas the rest of the United States is always like Frederick Douglass, post-emancipation. Typically, it's Virginia, Carolinas, and it's all in English. But I mean, it's really insane to read these people's accounts. And even when the hurricane hits, they had slaves on the island, and I mean,
Grand Isle?
On last island.
Okay.
Well, both. They had slaves on both at one point or another, but slaves on the island when this hurricane hits. And imagine having this storm hitting, and you're already at the bottom of the totem pole. And when this storm hits, nature shows no tide here or there. There's no pun intended, but I mean, one of the main survivors is a slave who stayed in the strongest building, all made of brick, and he, you read stories like that, and again, it's all in French, but I mean, the book itself is not in French. Don't get me wrong, but like all these little written documents, it was all in French.
You know, you just mentioned that, and I was thinking, because I've just recently watched a couple movies in that period, and one of the movies I was watching, at the end of the day, when the slaves would come in from the fields, they would chain them in their bedrooms. And like you said, that a lot of times they had no clue that hurricanes were coming. Can you imagine being chained to a wall and then the waves start coming in, crashing, like you said, one after the other, and you're chained. You can't run away, you can't climb in a tree. And you're knowing that, like, every time this wave comes in and the water comes up another 6 inches, you know.
Yeah, so it was way worse, for them in that sense, like that's something you don't really think about, because that storm, it didn't stop at Isle Derniere. Obviously, it kept fucking going, and it was blowing buildings clear off their foundations in Morgan City, Thibodeau. Thibodeau recorded like 100-something miles an hour winds back then, and this is when we actually had some sort of a fucking coastline, recently took a trip to St. Augustine, Florida. That's the oldest settlement in the United States, but they would tie massive chains, like you see on the boats in Fouchon, massive chains around their wooden homes because of the storms that would hit, just in case they'd have just big storms that would hit.
Wouldn't float or blow away or anything.
Correct.
Jesus.
Man.
Storms are some of the scariest things I've ever been through. I stayed for Hurricane Andrew, and that one time that I stayed on a tugboat, and if another hurricane comes and I'm able to leave, I'll leave no matter what, because that was extremely. We stayed in Baie Lafourche on a tugboat.
Wow.
And Hurricane Andrew was coming in, and it was like maybe 10 or 12 hours before, and we were watching the news, and it was just this massive red ball of death. And my little brother had left, and he called me crying. He's like, dude, please get in your car and leave. And it was too late. I couldn't leave. There was no way. But I'd have been stuck in the traffic in the middle of the storm.
That's even worse, yeah.
So the Baie Lafourche actually started to raise so high that it started to tip the boat towards the dock.
Land?
Well, because we were tied. So the guy that owned the dock and the boat woke me up, and he's like, "You gotta go outside and loosen the ropes," because the boat was leaning so hard.
It's pulling you down.
So we went outside, we loosened the ropes, that way the boat could level off. But what that did was it gave it enough slack that the boat, for I guess 10 hours, just rocked back and forth, slamming against the dock.
Wow.
For about 10 hours. So you could just imagine how much sleep I had,
Right.
just getting rocked, every 15 seconds, because the wind would push it and it would extend those ropes all the way and then just slam back into the dock.
Mm-hmm.
And the scariest thing I saw one of those giant billboards that you drive by.
Yeah.
They're in the pole that goes into the ground is like, I guess 4 foot wide. I watched that twist like a rope until it just fell over.
Wow.
It was straight across the bay, and I watched through a little porthole, and I said, man, if it's doing that shit, like, we're all dead. I had made up in my mind, like, there's going to be so much devastation and death on this bayou, I don't even know if I want to stay here anymore.
Right.
It wasn't as bad as I expected, but it was really... You would drive months and months later on Baie Lafourche and still see damage that wasn't cleaned up and fixed.
And a lot of where a lot of the damage comes in at is the tornadoes inside the hurricanes. Like storm surge, we always hear about storm surge because it's the Gulf. That's what's pushing up against our coast. But it's the tornadoes really inside these hurricanes that do a lot of the damage. Probably would wreck that billboard. And the reason why I say that, I was 2 years old for Hurricane Andrew. But my grandparents were living here in Thibodeau, and they lost their house from a tornado that came through with that hurricane, ripped the roof right off the house and basically flooded the inside.
Jesus.
Well, it depends on what side you on.
Yeah.
Side of the storm you on.
The right side's always the worst.
There's the wind. The right side's always the worst. I mean, that's for Katrina. We stayed in La Rose. That was shitty, real shitty. My grandma likes to evacuate after the storms because she doesn't like being without air conditioning. But as
I
soon
agree.
as soon as that power goes out, especially when you're in August, you know, like damn.
Yeah.
And it's hot afterwards always. I'm
I
surprised
stay-
we went back to school at Saint Lafourche so fast after the storm. We were only out of school for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We didn't have to relocate though.
Got to get that good education.
Get that good.
I think with Katrina, the biggest issue was those levees breaking in New Orleans. You know, so they just kind of got.
That's all man-made shit,
You know.
though. That's not storm. That's not
Right.
the storm that did it. We
It
could've
was
easily
just
prevented
faulty.
that.
You know, but I stayed for Gustav. Gustav was worse for our area than Katrina was. You know, I was down St. Charles Bypass, and during Gustav, I remember sitting outside in the backyard and watching tornadoes pass, you know, through it. And I've seen a trailer get picked up and flipped upside down. You
I
know?
would have not been sitting outside watching.
What else can you do? You know, I love watching the
Yeah.
weather. You know, it rained a lot, but it was a lot of wind, a
Right.
lot of wind damage.
Well, it's almost like staring at a fire. It's almost like it puts you in a trance, you know, watching those
relaxing.
clouds bubble and
I guess we were lucky. We're in a house, a brick house, you know, with a gas power generator, the natural gas. So I never lost electricity. You know, we had like 4 or 5 refrigerators and the food that we wanted, air conditioning, all of that. So we were kind of, you know, luxury for it.
sounds like a lot of white privilege.
But
That reminds
some
me.
others were not.
That reminds me. Not the white privilege thing. The
I'm just joking, by the way.
What you was saying about the storms and stuff. This is going to be a plug. Louisiana Dread, new episode of the actual series is almost done. Finished being written. Finished being writing. That's what I almost just said.
Grand out.
Salafouche education, baby. We're just proving it time after time
Right.
after.
Everybody listening is like, these fucking Bosco-yos, they don't know what the hell's going on. Anyway, no, so Louisiana Dread, we finishing a hurricane episode, but also it's a new series coming out that we're going to be going to Grand Isle, and we videoing people who survived Hurricane Hilda and their events, and during Hurricane Andrew as well. And it's going to be a series with older people from the island. Like, these are, you know, people that been on the island their whole lives, and they stay for the storms, and then just their experiences encountering Mother Nature's fucking hell and living to tell about it. And it's just to show what it's like to really go through some of these things. And not a lot of it has been put on video.
Right.
And had that, you know, they'll do some stuff back in the day. They'll interview people in the news, and they're like, man, I stayed. And it's just some random crackhead that they find. It's not even a local that they find. It's just some methed out BP worker that came, in 2010 and just never left. And he's just, you know, doing his fucking thing. It's not a local. So we got to get the actual accounts of these people.
I think all those people moved to Galliano, by the way.
They need to get out of here.
Yeah, please.
The storms themselves, I mean, they suck for everybody, obviously, but I mean, as researchers, as historians, well, armchair historians, I guess we'll call us, lovers of all things history, it's detrimental to us as well in a different way, because you lose so much shit.
Yes.
So when you go to these places, Rattlesnakedre's looking through all these marshlands, and that's just getting covered by shit over and over and over again, and new things get deposited and stuff.
And hurricanes actually wash them out or wash them on shore. Because the best time to actually go metal detecting is directly after a storm.
Really?
Because in Florida, some of the most valuable things ever found from the Tocha were found after a really bad hurricane.
Wow.
And what's a crazy coincidence, it was a hurricane that sunk the ship. So it was a hurricane that sunk the ship, and it was a hurricane that actually uncovered it.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
There's something telling
It
about
is
that.
crazy that we were on the subject of hurricanes and devastation. And
It's my specialty.
so what I just emptied out a bag of stuff that I have brought from Rattlesnakedre's relic room.
Wow.
And I laid them out right here. This is creepy, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So this is a one of the first photographs that's ever, I guess, right when they started was, I guess, the 1800s, mid 1800s. And this was actually like a little book. This was like, if you look on the back side, it's made of leather, and there should be a little clasp on the end, maybe. Okay, not on this one. But this would open up, and they'd have this is a picture of two ladies. So it's either sisters or a mother and a daughter. And this is what the soldiers would carry with them when they were going to war or they were going to battle, so they could have something to look back on. And I guess if you go on Dank Swamp Rebellion's Instagram, they might put a picture up. Or if you go on my Facebook, Rattlesnakedre, you can find pictures of all the stuff I'm gonna have. I'm gonna post a picture of everything I brought today. Actually,
Is that dreadlocks?
I don't know. Let me see.
It gave me a weird vibe.
It's definitely creepy, right?
Yeah.
Like two lesbians or something?
It does look like dreadlocks.
No, it looks like a mother and a daughter.
Possible. Okay, fair enough.
I mean,
They don't really pose, you know.
What's your
It's
search
like, I don't
history?
know.
Yeah. But another weird thing about pictures like that, they would open the eyes of the dead and they would take a picture. Like
That's
the whole
weird.
family would take a picture with the dead person as if they were alive because they wanted to have the last
Photo.
of that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
They put all that shit just to kind of leave their eyes open. It's so creepy.
But I can only imagine that a soldier was holding that picture before he went into battle, taking the last look before he went, take a huge risk of his life, shooting at people and stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of other very interesting things. I'm going to save this one for last. This is a set of skeleton keys that were found in a house. That's really cool because I've actually found multiple padlocks. I've actually never found a skeleton key metal detecting before, but those were found in someone's house when they were tearing down the house, and they gave them to me.
Wow. Let's see. Soud Steel. S-O-U-D. Steel.
There's some weird stuff written on them.
Yeah, it's
But
a company.
this is probably the weirdest thing that was found in a house that was torn down. That was found on the floor of a house, or maybe it was underneath the house. I'm not sure, but that's a hand carved. And if you look at what it is, it's a hand carved.
Toy.
Yeah, it's a toy. It's about 3 inches tall, and it was made for, I guess, his daughter. But if you look at the way it's dressed and you look at the picture here, that's how you can date that. Because the clothes that they're wearing is very similar to the carving, the wooden carving of the girl.
Yeah.
So that's mid 1800s with the little hat.
Mm-hmm. Andre, I'm not going to lie to you. This is giving me real...
Bad vibes, right?
This is real, like, Warren from... what's that fucking movie?
The Conjuring?
The Conjuring.
The
Yeah,
Warrens?
the Warrens.
Yeah.
This is giving me those kind of vibes.
If that's giving you those vibes, you definitely need to come to my house. Because when you walk through
Why would I? It's the third
When you-
creepiest thing you've ever said to me.
come to my house.
Come to me.
When you walk through the threshold of the door where I have all this stuff, instant change.
Really?
Because it's from ceiling to floor, stuff like that.
Wow.
And we didn't even get to the creepiest stuff yet. So we looked at the skeleton keys. We have a 1800s picture. We have a small carving of a woman in mid 1800s dress. What is she holding in her hand?
It's a toy. I don't know. It looks like a
Bible.
That's creepy though. So this is actually a musket ball I found today, and that was not found on it's made of lead. It's super heavy. That was not found on a battle site. So this is one of the first Cajuns or Spanish or German, whoever. Those are the three nationalities I know, and French, that were all here. So that was, someone was trying to feed their family with that or protect their family. But I found that today. That's fresh out the dirt. come find Rattlesnakedre in the dirt.
Yeah, this could definitely protect, to eat.
Yeah. So that's
Wow.
that's a super. Every time I dig those up, I never get tired of digging them up because I know what it was used for, how connected that is to history.
Yeah.
Can you
Pretty
imagine
amazing.
getting hit with one of these?
Dude, that's what I was just thinking.
I
Like,
told that
that's
story
gotta
already.
suck.
If you see in the movies, people get shot and they like, oh no, and then they kind of fall. That's not really how it happened in actual life. When people were hit with those, this was not going at the same velocity as rifles do today. The rifles today, it'll pass straight through and through you. These would stop. That's why people were cutting their arms off in the Civil
You could
War.
keep rolling. Yeah, if you get hit with that, you're not going to necessarily die unless
No.
it hits you in your...
But it'll stop in your arm.
Mhm.
So this was hitting you. It was like getting hit with a baseball going 200 miles an hour. That would fold you in half. So if you're standing in the line in battle and someone on the side of you gets shot, they're getting folded like they got tackled.
Yeah.
So that's even creepier than just a bullet passing through somebody.
Yeah. Because it could have very well just hit them and bounced off, depending
Yeah.
on what they were wearing. I mean, and how far away they were when it hit them.
And what's really crazy is if you go read the reports, a lot of times cannon fire was either fired well above the soldiers, that way it would explode and fall into them as shrapnel, or they would shoot like a couple yards in front of them, so it would bounce and just take more and more people out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Lord of the Rings. I know how warfare
Well, there you
works.
go. I don't watch TV, so I wouldn't know. So this is, I think I've shown this already, but this is a actual button carved of an oyster shell, and that's probably one of the coolest things I've ever found.
This is nice.
That
Look
goes
at
to show you the Cajun ingenuity.
that, and like the detail they took in making their clothes back then, because
Mm-hmm.
every bit of clothing was unique, made individually. It wasn't
Yep.
some mass-produced thing that Ralph Lauren or these
Well,
people-
100 years ago, if you were trying to buy clothes, someone had to make it. Most of the time, they would just send you the material, and you would have to sew it together. Because I have magazines from the 1800s, and they would send you just stretches of raw material and how to cut it out.
wow.
And this is a pocket watch, and that goes along with this piece right here, which is really cool. This is actually a spur, and this is Civil War era. This was off the spur probably of a general or a sergeant that was leading his men. And to think why that would have came off, I don't think that would have just fell off. He was probably injured and
Twist his ankle in a hole.
yeah,
It's
or
small.
shot off of his horse and he fell off his horse.
Your boy got a small foot.
But all these different things that you hold in your hand right now, like a pocket watch, the spur off of a boot, these things, something traumatic in history had to happen for them to lose them.
Yeah, because you got to think this was probably on pretty tight.
Yeah,
They
well,
probably
that's-
squeezed them on and then sew.
That's how he steered his horse. That's how he got it to start and stop. So for him to lose that, something traumatic had to happen.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Yeah.
Just like the
heel.
pocket, just like the pocket watch right here. This is a man's would let him know what time he was going, what time he had to be somewhere, what time to start the battle. Because a lot of times they would have people that would they would send letters to each side saying, "Hey, we're going to start at high noon. That's what time the battle's going to start." So all these different things I brought in here today are all very traumatic to history, but the piece I hold in my hand right now is probably has the most moving experience. So I'm going to let you look at it and you see if you can make out what that little emblem is on the end of it. Judging by the look on your face, I think you just realize what it is.
Wow, is
And
this
that was found in Raceland, and I have a great story about that on why. Okay, I'm gonna explain it to you.
this is a swastika?
That is a swastika. Can you see it, Tauzin?
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has one little piece that's broken off, but that was found in Raceland, and I'll tell you why they had a swastika found in Raceland. In Raceland, you know where the paper mill is?
Yeah.
There's a house. It's a white house with red bricks at the bottom. They caught 50 Germans in Grand Isle. It was either on a boat or a submarine, and they took him prisoner.
U-boat.
It was a U-boat.
Yep.
And they kept him. So this little, what it is, it's a tie clip. So this would clip on their tie. So this swastika tie clip was found in Valentine, the exact spot where they had 50 prisoners of war. And like you said, they worked the fields. They used them just like they were slaves.
Yeah.
But one of the coolest stories I've heard about it was the Cajun people are so, I guess, forgiving and accepting, because that's what they've done through history. They've actually made friends with some of the Germans, and there's a family on the bayou that has a German-made chair of wood. They made it of wood by one of the German prisoners. But they had over 50 prisoners, and this is a little piece of history that proves that point right there.
Wow.
But this was when I dug this up, it was folded in half, so I couldn't tell what this was. But when I got home and I was cleaning it up, it was like a bolt of lightning just hit me. And when I realized what this was, and I said, holy crap. You know, this is this piece right here belongs in a museum. It does not belong in my room.
Right.
You know.
You know who would love that? The World War II Museum.
Probably so.
Yeah. But by far, the creepiest fucking thing you have here is the little picture and the doll. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's Warren stuff.
Like I said, if you go on my Facebook page, I'll post some stuff. If you go on Dank Swamp Rebellion's Instagram, I'm sure they're going to post some pictures later of all the stuff I have. But definitely the wood carving of the girl's doll, when you hold it in your hand. I'll bring this, the next event we all go to as our little club that we have. I'll bring some of these things so you can actually hold them in your hand, because I've gone to multiple museums, and you can't touch anything. But how much of a difference was it when you got to hold some of these things from history? Mm-hmm. How different was it when you got to hold this piece of metal that a Nazi wore? You know, it really brings it home. It's not like learning in school when you just read it in a book or your teacher tells you. It's completely different when you get to hold it in your hand.
Yeah, man, and I'm never going to forget these ladies' faces.
Thanks for coming back to Ghosts of the Coast. Tune in every Sunday for new volumes. A DSR production.